Hey y'all, welcome back to Ascending with Ashley. I'm Ashley. Alright, this is story time. I'm still watching these brothers in Compton share with Peter. So I wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about the mental health groups and the folks that I worked alongside with in Skid Row in downtown. So I started two mental health groups at this place called Share. Share was an acronym. What was Share an acronym for? I don't know, but they did a lot of 12-step programs, and it was like county funded, nonprofit, and the founders of the nonprofit taught us. That's where I got my peer specialist certificate, was through Share. I also tried to get a job through Share, but I didn't pass the drug test because I smoke weed. And so the county won't fund that. So instead of getting a job, I started these programs, and they had no problem with me running stuff voluntarily. So they have Share had a space in Culver City and a space in Culver City's like halfway from downtown to Venice Beach. Culver City's where a lot of like big studios are and stuff like that. Anyway, off topic. It's right off of like Venice Boulevard. But anyway, I want to talk about, I'm remembering some of the groups. So I did community resiliency, for about a year. Was it a year? Not even. Oh yeah, it was. It was a little over a year because it was 2017 to when I found out I was pregnant with him, which was 2018, the end of 2018. In a bagel? What do you want? What do you want with those? Anyway, so community resiliency was like a project that came out of my thesis, my master's thesis, and it was all about reclamation of agency, and understanding that individuality to blame for like systemic issues and like people's behavior and, you know, within the incarceration systems and stuff. It wasn't a fair assessment, and so I worked with a lot of folks. I remember one time it was around Mother's Day, and I was like, let's do Mother's Day cards or like whatever. And one of the guys had to like plug in his ankle bracelet for stuff. One of the guys I worked with, he had just gotten out of prison. He was in prison for like 36 years. He made a mistake, wrong place, wrong time with someone, you know, when he was younger. And he was in prison for 36 years, and he had just gotten out, and he came to Share. And he really, like, throughout the time I was there with him, he was doing amazing things when I left LA. And he and I stayed in contact a little bit after the fact, but a lot of the people who come out of prison, there's no re-entry stuff, and so I was helping folks with like internet and like learning about how to do computer stuff because they just didn't do that. I think it's a little bit different now. I think there's a lot more access in prisons, but not all of them. But anyway, there's like no re-entry. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. I also had, it's a pretty well-known fact, but I didn't really know about it until I left LA, and I'm glad because I really turned a blind eye to the prostitution happening in LA because it made me very uncomfortable. It's a big thing in Skid Row. Human trafficking is a big thing. Drugs, obviously. Prostitution. I saw some stuff in Skid Row that I wish I never saw. One time I watched a woman turning a trick, is what they call it, in a porta potty right there in the middle of the day. And then I never wanted to see anything else. It broke my heart. But I started a second group after community resiliency called Women's Empowerment, and there were women in there who had, been prostitutes. I think both of the women that I remember sharing their story were in Hollywood, but it's pretty well-known fact that Figueroa, which runs north and south in LA, is a big, especially down in Compton, is a big, well, not even, it's all over, is a big it's a hot spot for prostitution, but I didn't know that living there because we were only a couple blocks away from Figueroa, and I'm really glad I didn't know that because it just hurts my heart. You know, one of the things about, I'm going to just interject here, there's a lot of pro-sex work activism within the movement, and I have never really been able to get on board with that because I believe, this is just my beliefs, it's nothing towards the women, it's looking at things systemically, that I feel like sex work is it's too much patriarch, you know what I mean? It's too much patriarch, it's violence towards women. I understand that sex work is work, but as a I've never been able to get on board with the activism. I'm all for pro-choice, pro-whatever, but seeing it firsthand and understanding the relations of like pimps and trafficking, and especially being in LA, you understand how Hollywood plays an impact on that. No bueno. I can't ever get on board with that. I'm all for the activists and, you know, strippers and people who do support women in that field and are, you know, but as a whole, I believe that it's still supporting the patriarch, and I would like to see the abolishment of the patriarch and the return to the matriarch, which sex work is not, you know, it's a very real reality for a lot of people, but in my envisionment for the future, it's not something that I can. Anyway, all that to say, yeah, hearing the stories from folks, working with folks, and then we started a cancer jam because cancer is pretty stigmatized and taboo in Skid Row, and we did that. Again, it was right before I found out I was pregnant, so it was one of my friend's dying wishes. She had cancer. She really wanted to see this happen, so I put that together with her, but we only did it a few times. But yeah, cancer is not really something that a lot of people feel comfortable talking about in Skid Row. I think because it makes them seem weak or vulnerable, and that's already like a hot spot for a lot of violence, right? There's lots of theft, there's lots of harassment, there's lots of stuff, but it's a lot more people coming from outside of Skid Row, like not a part of the community and preying on the community. And I think that's what LA Can does such a good job with, is really humanizing the experience of people who are living in Skid Row. Whereas the city and the police will always demonize those folks as like they're the problem. But the real problem is that the city has no solutions. The city's not putting housing together, right? The city's not, you know, they started these smart teams while we were there, and they started all of this other shit where all of the county workers and all these people come together and do outreach, but there's nothing to give them, right? And so people have to do what they have to do, and sex work is one of those things, right? Selling drugs is one of those things, you know, selling whatever they can. And with people who have nothing, it's often themselves in different ways, whether that's labor, sex work, drugs, you know, stuff that they have. People just take, so many people in the city and the county themselves do that as well. They come in and they do these big ass sweeps, where they're just stealing people's everything, and then it's just so hard. It's so fucking expensive to be so incredibly poor, and I think that people just don't realize that. So anyway, all of those things impact people's mental health, obviously, their physical health, everything. You know, if you can't even get a bus token to get to a doctor, right? If you don't have ID, if you don't have an address, you can't get a job. And I think those are the things that people just don't understand. They're just like, get a job, bitch. If you don't have an address when you fill out a job application, if you don't have a phone, which the Obama phones are really big in Skid Row. But it's, again, that's, you know, surveillance of the state in a different form, looking like it's, you know, a handout. And it's not, there's so many issues, and it's not at an individual level. That's the bottom line of what I want to get. I don't feel, you know, I worked with a lot of people in Skid Row. I've heard a lot of stories. I met a lot of people. And the community resiliency and the women's empowerment were really, really good projects. And I'm really, really grateful that I got to be in those spaces and support folks. You know, I had folks who were in and out of incarceration and in and out of mental institutions. And I'm really grateful that Cher let me do that again voluntarily, even though I couldn't get hired. You know, and that's the great thing. It was started by two women, Libby and Ruth. And, you know, both of them are very present at the Culver City office. That's where we did the peer specialist treatment, or this peer specialist certification. I think that was like, what, 6-week program? But it was just, yeah. I think all that to say is, like, when you don't know anything about anything, don't judge it. And ultimately, like, state is the problem, because there are plenty of resources, and especially right now we're seeing all of the money that we pay into taxes go to funding a genocide, right? And it's like, we have places like Skid Row in every single urban landscape in this country. We have prostitution in all of these places. I know Phoenix is really bad for a lot of that stuff. I don't go to Phoenix, but that's the state I live in right now, you know? And my only experience is, you know, LA. And, you know, you have all of these missions and churches, and that's just colonial shit all over again, right? You have to subscribe to these beliefs that you may not necessarily believe in just to get something, right? It's like, it shouldn't have to come to that, you know? And it shouldn't have to come to turning tricks in a porta potty either, or taking a shit on the fucking sidewalk, or shooting up because you just want to escape. Like, shit's real. It's real out there. So I'm running out of time, but I just wanted to say, share, because a lot of this LA stuff is floating back to me. So I hope you enjoyed this. I can talk more about it. If you have any questions, let me know. And I didn't mean to offend anyone with the sex work. I am so grateful I never had to turn to that. But ultimately, it's not against individuals. Again, I want to say that it's against the system of patriarchy that preys on women, right? Okay, have a good one.